Some stories should never be told, but you're about to hear them anyway. Enter Fatal Frames. I haven't driven back down that road in over 25 years. Not because I forgot the way, because I remember exactly what happened the last time I did. We'd parked, killed the engine, and walked the road on foot with flashlights, the way you do at 17 when you want to prove something to yourself more than you actually want to find anything. We didn't find anything. We turned around to walk back to the cars. We ran 2 cars that night, the way you did if you were smart about it, so if one broke down, the other could get you out. There was a third vehicle behind ours now, an old Bronco. Its headlights were off. The only reason we noticed it at all was the steam still lifting off the hood. It had rained an hour earlier, and something about that, a machine that hot, sitting, that still in the dark, with its lights deliberately off, told us before any of us said it out loud. This wasn't someone who'd gotten lost. It had a light bar mounted on the roof. Even at a glance, it didn't sit right, not shaped or mounted the way a real one is. It started flashing at us, high beams, low beams, the bar itself cycling white, then amber, then red. No pattern we could predict. Nobody got out. Nobody said a word. We got in the cars and drove. It followed. I'm not going to tell you how that ended yet. I'm going to tell you why we were on that road in the first place. I promise you, the drive that came after is the least strange part of this story. This is Fatal Frames, Case File 015. Every case file on this channel starts the same way. We say, convince, don't prove, because we can never hand you actual proof of anything supernatural, only the pieces that are real, and let you decide what to do with the gap in between. This time the gap is smaller than usual and stranger, because for once, the person telling you this story isn't a witness we tracked down and interviewed. It's me. This is the road 2 miles from where I grew up. Before anything else, one honest correction, because it matters for everything that follows. The road itself, Cossart Road, and the wooded valley most people mean when they say Beaver Valley, aren't actually the same place. They're about 3.5 miles apart in 2 different counties on 2 sides of the Brandywine. Locally, nobody makes that distinction. Growing up, it was all just back there, one place, one set of stories, one reason your parents didn't want you driving out that way after dark. So that's how I'm going to tell it to you too, one place, because that's how it actually lived in my head at 17. Just no going in. 2 real separate parcels of land, treated as one by everybody who's actually from there, myself included. Cossart Road itself is barely 2 miles long, a narrow stretch of blacktop in Pennsbury Township, Chester County, Pennsylvania, connecting 2 bigger roads and not much else. If you didn't grow up near it, you'd drive its whole length in under 3 minutes and never think about it again. Locals call it something else. They call it Devil's Road. Some call it Satan's Road. If you ask why, you won't get one answer. You'll get 4 or 5, all slightly different. None of them agreeing on exactly what happened there or when, only that something did. Here's the part that isn't folklore. In October of 2012, the actual Pennsbury Township government asked the actual Pennsylvania State Police to send extra patrols down Cossart Road for Halloween. On the record, a named township manager told a named state trooper the road was, her words, frequented by mischief makers, and asked for it to be watched. The trooper agreed, confirmed his own barracks already knew to expect potential unwelcome visitors that time of year. That's not a ghost story anymore. That's a township government spending real resources on a road because too many teenagers, year after year, kept showing up looking for something. We were some of those teenagers. To understand why they kept coming, you have to understand whose land borders that road. This is DuPont country in the literal sense. A few miles from Cossart Road sits Granogue, 500 acres, bought up in the 1920s by Irene DuPont Sr., a former president of the DuPont Company who built a house there for his family of 9 children. It stayed in that same family for another 100 years, occupied right up until the owner's death in 2023. That's not legend, that's public record, and it's the kind of real, close, generational wealth that breeds exactly the kind of rumor we grew up hearing. The rumor, as it was told to us, somewhere back in that area, old towers, Civil War era, is what we were told, stood along both sides of the road as you went deeper in. The story was that the DuPonts used them to lock away their own children, lined the inside with broken glass so they couldn't climb out, and left them there to starve. I want to be straight with you about this one, the way this show tries to be straight about all of them. My friends and I actually did find towers back there, more than one scattered through Beaver Valley, about a quarter mile past Smith's Bridge. You can walk right up to them and see them for yourself. What you can't do is get inside one. They're too tall to climb without real gear, rope, a ladder, something none of us had or were willing to risk bringing out there at 17. I don't know of a single report anywhere of anyone actually getting inside one, so the towers themselves are real. What isn't confirmed is everything that's supposed to have happened inside them. No historical record, no property listing, no photograph anywhere ties an actual account of locked away children to a structure like that on or near Cossart Road. But here's what's real, and here's what I think actually happened to that specific piece of the story over however many decades of retelling. In 1915, Alfred the Frere DuPont, real person, real DuPont, had a bitter and very public falling out with his own cousin over control of the company. He built a wall around his estate in Wilmington, roughly 9 feet high, and topped it with broken glass in the French style, he called it, and joked that it was there to keep out the other DuPonts. That part is documented, dated in a real biography separately, and this part is real too. Alfred DuPont flatlined in 1935, and his will funded a children's hospital on that same estate, a real pediatric hospital that still operates today, built to treat disabled children, not harm them. A DuPont, a wall topped with broken glass, a DuPont Children's Hospital. Two real, true, completely unrelated facts, both true of the same family on the same land, decades apart. My own theory, and it's only a theory, is that somewhere over 50 years of teenagers telling this story to other teenagers, those two true things got woven into the part of the legend that never actually happened. But that's not proof the darker version never happened at all. It just means nobody, us included, has ever found any actual record of it. Maybe something like that really did happen back there in one of those towers or somewhere else entirely, and it just never made it into any record anyone's found yet. I'd rather leave that open than tell you it definitely isn't true. We saw other things back there that were real in the sense that we saw them with our own eyes, even if what they meant is a different question. There's a tree, more than one really, that locals call the skull tree for the shape of a hollow burned or grown into the trunk that genuinely does look, in the right light, like an empty eye socket. The story going around when we were kids was that infants had been placed inside it to flatline. I saw that tree myself. I never saw anything inside it. Years later, a different account from a longtime local named on the record said the same thing. What people occasionally found inside that hollow, when they found anything at all, were dolls. Decapitated dolls, not anything real. I don't know which telling is right for certain. I only know what I saw and what I didn't. Further back, past a fence line we never got past ourselves, there's a private stone house up a long driveway, screened by trees that people said was a satanic church or compound. Upside down crosses in the windows, supposedly. A Bible on an altar inside that gets heavier the farther you try to carry it away, supposedly. We never verified either detail. We never got past the gate. I'm telling you what we were told, not what we confirmed, because that's the honest version. Then there are the trees along the road itself, a real and strange detail that multiple sources, going back at least to a 2005 regional folklore book, all describe the same way. They rear back low near the base, unnaturally uniform, and then arch up and completely over the road, like they're recoiling from something and lunging over it at the same time. One writer described it as trees that rear back as if recoiling from something unspeakable. I remember it exactly that way, decades before I ever read that sentence. The trunks pull back from the road, and then the whole canopy closes back over it anyway, like it can't decide whether to recoil or reach for you. The mundane explanation when you ask a utility company instead of a ghost story is that power line crews trim trees away from the lines this way all the time. Maybe that's all it is. It's still unsettling to drive under. One more real thing, since people always ask. Yes, M. Night Shyamalan really did film The Village in a field a few miles from here in the fall and winter of 2003. That part's confirmed on the record by more than one source, including people who worked on it. What isn't confirmed anywhere by anyone who worked on it is that the location was picked because of any of these stories. As far as anyone's ever said publicly, that's a coincidence, a real one. And a strange one, but a coincidence. One more claim before I get to the one that matters most, and I want to walk you through this one carefully because what we found complicates it instead of settling it. A version of a girl flatlined out there, floating around online, describes something different entirely. Not a bridge, a car crash, a woman's ghost from a fatal accident on the road itself. We chased that one down hard because if it were real, it would matter. Here's what we actually found. The exact website currently running that claim publishes the identical article, word for word format, for random paired roads in at least 3 other states. And every time, whichever road doesn't already have a documented story gets assigned its own stock tragic death ghost. A drowned boy in one state, a mother and child in another, a motorcycle crash in a third. That's a real, demonstrable pattern. It's not a guess. But here's what that pattern doesn't actually prove. It tells you how this one version, the one sitting on that particular website, most likely got written. It doesn't tell you where that site heard car crash and Cossart Road in the same sentence in the first place, or whether they heard it from anywhere real at all. Even a website built to farm search traffic has to fill its blanks with something. Maybe they guessed. Maybe somebody somewhere really did tell tell a story like this one long before it ended up on a page designed to rank on Google. We couldn't trace it back far enough to know which, so I'm not going to stand here and tell you it's fake. I'm going to tell you we found a real reason to be suspicious of it, and then I'm going to leave the rest up to you. If you've ever heard your own version of this one, a real woman, a real crash out on that road, we'd genuinely like to know. Tell us in the comments. Maybe you know something we couldn't find. There's one more thread, and it's the one where the record actually splits in two, right down the middle, and I'm going to give you both halves instead of picking one. In 1978, a group of men connected to a real Philadelphia area organized crime crew called the Johnston Gang flatlined 3 of their own teenagers, informants they no longer trusted, and buried them somewhere in Chester County. Locally, some people just call the whole thing the Kitty Gang case. Kids flatlining kids, according to a local paper that's still publishing today. The case got well known enough outside the county that it became the real basis for a 1986 movie, At Close Range, Sean Penn, Christopher Walken. That part isn't rumor. That's documented film history. Here's where it gets local again and shakier. One old source claims part of that movie was actually filmed on Cossart Road itself, not just based on the case. I want to be straight with you. That claim traces back to exactly one place, secondhand, over a decade old, and nothing else backs it up. Maybe it's true. I can't confirm it, so take it for what it's worth. What I can tell you more about is where the bodies actually were. I read the actual court opinion myself, the real 2012 appellate ruling that cites the original 1980 trial testimony line by line. That document says only this: the men drove to, quote, a secluded area in southern Chester County and buried the bodies there. No road name, no township. That's the record, as precise as the law ever made it. But in 1999, a named Philadelphia Inquirer reporter wrote a piece about this same case, and he was more specific. He wrote that the bodies were found buried on a farm along the south side of Cossart Road. A real reporter, a real newspaper, 20 years after they flatlined, naming this exact road. I can't tell you which one is right. The court record and the newspaper record disagree, and I'm not going to pretend one of them settles it. I can tell you that when we were kids, everyone already believed the second version, the Cossart Road version, whether they'd ever read that 1999 article or not. It was just part of what you knew about the place before you were old enough to ask where you'd actually heard it. But if you asked anyone from Granogue Valley High School in the 1990s what the real story was, the one everybody actually did, not just talked about, they wouldn't tell you about towers or trees or a gang from the 70s. They'd tell you about the bridge. There are other old bridges out that way with their own scraps of rumor stuck to them. Thompson's Bridge, a crossing people call twin bridges, but neither one ever got a name attached to it. Only one did. Leaving our high school out Smithbridge Road across Route 202, the road runs straight to it. Smith's Bridge, an old wooden crossing back then, not the modern structure that's there today. You could feel the planks give under the car's tires. There was no inspection sticker, no weight limit sign, nothing telling you it was safe. And driving across it at night, you genuinely didn't know if it would hold. The ritual, as it was passed down to us, the way rituals like this always are, from an older kid to a younger one, never written down anywhere. You drive to the exact center of the bridge. You stop the car. You turn off the headlights. You turn off the engine. And you say her name 3 times. Desiree. If you do it right, the story goes, the car won't restart, not right away. And somewhere below, in the water, something rises. It's supposed to appear in front of your windshield, stare at you, and eventually pass through the car, trying to take a soul back down into the water with it. I did this. I'm not telling you a story I heard about someone else doing it. My friends and I drove out there, stopped in the middle of that bridge, and said her name 3 times the way we'd been told to. The first time I turned the key, the car didn't start. It started on the second try. Nobody saw anything. No figure, no face at the windshield, nothing in the water. I'm an eyewitness. And here's my actual testimony. The car hesitated once, and that's the entire supernatural content of my own experience on that bridge. Make of that whatever you want. I still don't know what to make of it myself, and it's been almost 30 years. Here's the part that still gets me, more than the hesitating engine ever did. Deep into researching this episode, we found a real, published regional ghost story book from 2005, an entire separate chapter in a completely different section of the book from anything about Cossart Road, titled Bridge Named Desiree, set around Smith Bridge, right where I grew up. A print book published years after we did this, naming the exact same ghost at the exact same bridge that a bunch of teenagers were already whispering to each other in the dark. I didn't get that name from a book. Whoever wrote that book apparently got it from the same place we did. So back to where I started. We went back to that same general area more than once, at night, always in 2 cars, because that's what you did if you were smart about it or thought you were. There were other things out there besides the bridge story. Chalk symbols on the pavement, spray paint on some of the trees, things that read at 17 as proof that something organized and sinister was really happening back there, and that read now with 30 years of distance as almost certainly kids just like us leaving something behind to scare the next group that came through. We never saw who left any of it. Neither did anyone else we ever talked to. The night that actually mattered, we parked, got out with flashlights, and walked the road on foot the way you do when you want to see or hear something, and the car windows feel like they're in the way. We didn't find anything. We turned back toward the cars. That's when we saw it. A third vehicle, an old Bronco, parked close behind ours. Headlights off, engine off. We had 2 cars of our own out there that night, the way you did if you were smart about it. The only reason we noticed the Bronco at all was the steam still lifting off the hood into the cold air. It had rained not long before, and a hood that hot, sitting that still in the dark told us before any of us said it out loud. Somebody had been sitting there, watching us, waiting, with the lights deliberately off. It had a light bar mounted on the roof. Even in that first look, something about it was wrong. Not shaped or spaced the way a real police light bar is. Whoever this was, we already knew before it did anything else that it wasn't law enforcement. It started flashing at us, not a steady pulse the way an actual emergency vehicle flashes. A pattern, deliberate feeling, unpredictable, high beams, then low beams, then the bar itself cycling white to amber to red. Nobody got out of it. Nobody said a word, not one word, the entire time. We couldn't see a driver. We couldn't see anyone inside it at all. We got in our cars. It followed. We drove out to the main road, and somebody made the call to head toward Wilmington, mostly just to see if it would actually keep following us that far across a state line. For no reason a normal person Would have. It did. It followed us across the Pennsylvania-Delaware line and kept coming. This was before cell phones were something a group of teenagers actually carried, so there was no calling anyone, no GPS pin to send, nothing but driving and watching the mirror. Someone wrote down its license plate at a red light, the one piece of real evidence we ever had for whatever that was worth, with no phone to call it in. Route 202 runs into I-95. We got on it heading south, took the next exit we came to, and drove straight for the nearest police station we knew of. The whole thing, from Cossart Road to that police station parking lot, took somewhere around 45 minutes to an hour, with that vehicle holding steady distance behind us almost the entire way. It didn't follow us into the station lot. It drove past. We watched it go, and none of us ever saw it again. We never found out who was in that vehicle. We never filed a report that led anywhere, as far as I know, all these years later. We cut way back on how often we went back to that road after that night, though we weren't the only ones with a story like it. Other kids from our school, kids we didn't even know well, had their own version of being run off, chased, or watched out there, entirely independent of us, over the same years. The road is still there. Cossart Road, still barely 2 miles long, still gets its extra patrol every Halloween, still gets called Devil's Road by everyone who grew up near it. Even Kevin Legowski, who wrote an entire dedicated chapter on this exact road in a 2025 book, a professional who spent real time researching it for publication, ended up admitting the same thing every source before him basically admits. The road's reputation is a grab bag. Towers real enough to stand in front of. Nobody's ever gotten inside one. A church nobody can verify. A gang whose own court record won't confirm the address. A girl at a bridge that no death certificate, no newspaper, no historical society anywhere has ever been able to attach a real name or year to, outside of what a bunch of teenagers already believed decades before anyone wrote it down. There's no one unifying story here. There's just a place that's been collecting them for longer than anyone currently telling them has been alive. Since we were already digging this deep into the area, worth mentioning, it's not the only haunted address nearby. The Chad's Ford Inn, a few miles off, has its own long-running staff accounts of a couple locals called Katie and Simon. A nearby winery has its own story about a little girl seen playing in the yard after closing. Neither one has anything to do with Cossart Road specifically. This whole stretch of the Brandywine Valley, it turns out, just collects these stories. So that's Case File 015. A road, a bridge, a name said 3 times into an engine that hesitated once and then started anyway, and a chase 30 years ago now that nobody to this day has ever explained. A couple of these we genuinely couldn't close the book on, and I'd rather leave them open than pretend we did. The car crash, what actually happened inside those towers, if anything ever did. We found real reasons to doubt both. We didn't find proof. Either one is nothing. If you know something we don't, that's exactly what the comments are for. More generally, if you grew up near a road like this one, the kind with a nickname nobody official ever gave it, or you've got your own bridge, your own name you were told to say and never quite wanted to test, tell us about it too. This one was personal for me. I'd genuinely like to know how many of you have one just as real. This has been Fatal Frames, Case File 015. We'll see you at the next one.